I'm Jess,
And I'm Wes,
and we are the
the
Ontario
Ontario
Wildmen.
Wildmen.
On this show, we travel back and revisit the significant moments, the heroes, the villains, the legends, and all things professional wrestling in Ontario, Canada. Wes, we are back. We are back. We are back. We are back. What's going on, man? How are you?
We are back again. This is episode number 8, Jesse. I'm going to tell you something. I never mentioned this to you, but I was watching I've been watching a lot of YouTube about starting a podcast channel and going on YouTube, which is what we're hoping to venture into next month anyways. And someone said, well, most YouTube or most podcasts don't get past, unless they're not professional, they don't get past episode number 7. So that means we've made it, man. We're 8. We're number 8. And we've got, I got the list here, 17 pages. We're booked up to 2047. I'm gonna be 90 years old. We've got topics for all that time. It's as usual, Jesse. It's awesome. I was going to throw another word in there, but I won't.
Yeah, no, family show. No, it's exciting to be back. With this, last month was fun with Rob on the show, talking to us about Demand Lucha, the independent scene in Ontario. I'm going to Demand Lucha. We're going to talk all about that later in the show. But today we're going to do something a little different, aren't we, Wes?
It's going to be fun and it's going to be interesting, but on the same note, it's what we don't like to talk about.
That's right.
Unfortunately, people are going to pass, and this is the day after the Grey Cup, and the Ticats did not win, unfortunately. And we're going to be talking about the biggest Ticat of them all, number 68, Big Angelo Mosca.
That's right, man. Angelo Mosca. We're doing a tribute to Mosca in his career today in his Ontario, being the Ontario Wildmen show. We always like to focus on Ontario, Canada content and what happened in our province. So that's why we're going to cover King Kong Mosca today. I didn't even argue the fact that when he passed, you're like, yo, man, I know we have him planned, but we got to bump him up. We got to do him now. And I couldn't, I was more happy to do it. I am very happy to do it today. And like you always say, it's going to be fun.
We usually touch on some passings if there is something in between the two shows or our monthly shows. And, Mosca passed away and he hadn't been in greatest health recently. He still was an icon here. Long career. And as you said, Jesse, we're focusing on Ontario. When we get into our other podcasts, we will be focusing on the world. We can talk, if we choose to, we can talk about Mosca in Australia. We can talk about Mosca in California, Texas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, we're going to be focusing on Ontario for the most part today. That's where I know you've done a lot of research, and I've done some research about how he got back here. Again, how he got back here over his career, which he did a lot.
Yeah. But before we do all that kind of stuff, let's get into the modern wrestling news. I know you like to know what's going on out there. So I sent you a video a couple weeks ago about Seth Rollins being attacked by a fan. Remember the guy, he came through on the side, he double leg takedown? Bro, this guy is nuts. He even released a video the next day saying, oh, I got beef with Colby or whatever his real name is. I was like, yo, this fan is legit nuts, thinking that he has real heat with the real person. He doesn't have heat with Seth Rollins, the wrestler. He has real heat with the guy who plays the character.
I know we don't like to talk about what we hear on other podcasts, but it sounded like a complete joke. And I know in the days of when I was going to wrestling, and that's one reason why I never jumped in the ring. I don't care how upset I may or may not have been. You're going to get thumped and you're going to get arrested backstage. And you might even get thumped, then arrested, and then thumped at the police station. So and apparently this guy just got off, and like the next day he's posting YouTube videos, and like, I'm just, what has the wrestling world come to when what was this like, just guy's just a jerk. Like, I don't get it.
I mean,
explain it to me, Jesse. Explain it to me.
I get the fact that people are like everyone's like, oh, remember back in the day, True Heat. Okay, back in the day, there was in the 50s. Yeah, okay. Fritz von Erich was hiding under the ring, and Angelo Singh was hiding under the ring, and the stories of Piper getting stabbed. It it's a different time. Now I have to kind of throw it on the security a little bit. Like even everyone's thrown off. Like he just came out of the out of the crowd and just fully sideswiped him. And like everyone's like, oh, if I was the wrestler, I would have beat him up. You can't.
Yeah.
You just get sued.
Yeah.
Nowadays, everyone just, oh, I got punched by someone who makes $1.5 million a year. I just made $500,000.
Yeah.
Just because I attacked him. Stupid. Absolutely retarded. Anyways, don't get me hot. Don't get me hot, Wes.
I just, yeah, it's beyond the comprehension of me. Why, when, how, where, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, let alone security.
Yeah. Like, oh, I have real beef with the real person.
Yeah.
You're an idiot.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
Anyways, let's move on. This one's kind of big. WWE is done with DVDs, and they are completely done with WWE Home Video. I think this is going to be the last year that they're going to release pay-per-views on DVD and such. On Cornette's podcast recently, they even brought it up that, well, the wrestlers are going to lose their royalties, right? And I never even thought of that when I brought this up to you. I was like, I've never even thought of that. These guys that are making, here's a $100 check from a couple DVDs being sold or whatever, you know what I mean? Now they're not going to get that. But in a world of streaming, and everyone streams, some people don't even have cable. They just subscribe to all these things.
Cable.
Yeah, I know you don't. I'm trying to get you to have cable.
I don't have TV either.
Do they have cable in Winnipeg? Up there in Manitoba?
No.
No? Igloo's up there, eh?
Yeah. Igloos and moose, baby.
The Moose, I believe.
Yes. So are these guys, pick some top guy in the WWE right now?
Okay, let's say Hulk Hogan, because he's not even there. I know, but anything with Hulk Hogan on DVD, right? You have to get it's done.
Yeah, it's in the contract, and maybe now these guys, their contracts might be a little bit more because they're not getting actually paid for that extra stuff. So they're on a salary, so to speak, right? And they know they're going to do 200 shows a year or whatever, and it's not part of the deal anymore. We briefly talked about on one of our shows. It was one of the groups had sold. One of the groups had sold the videos, but was closing down.
Ring of Honor closed down.
Yeah. So
and we're talking about the video content of that.
Yes, we briefly talked about that, and back in the day, that's why McMahon. One of the reasons why McMahon went global, like crazy ballistic, because he knew he's going to sell 1 million video cassettes of every show.
Mm-hmm.
Who cares if only 23,000 people can get into the Madison Square Garden? And then they started doing the pay-per-views at the movie theaters and stuff. It was all about the videos. I mean, I rented the videos. I didn't even buy them. I rented them. Some of those videos from back in the day, I probably rented 3 times. Someone made a shitload of money off that stuff, right? And DVDs, it's getting close to passe, right? Because, like you said, streaming.
Old technology, almost, in a sense. But here's the thing, like, I like to collect them. So now they become collector's items in a sense, right?
Yeah.
If they're a discontinued product, are certain ones going to be worth certain amount of money now? Now, is there going to be a niche market for that? You have to think about that too, right? So it's going to be interesting.
Maybe the really cool film that I have on carved in stone down in the basement might be worth something one day.
Carved in stone. Well, you couldn't even carve your way to a good meal without your wife.
I made liver last night.
Liver.
Yeah, but it
Holy.
wasn't very good.
I would never eat liver. If I ever come and stay at your house, don't make me liver.
You like spicy food?
Yeah, a little
Okay.
bit. I'm sure there's tea up there that can settle the stomach.
There's tea that can settle the stomach.
Jeff Hardy, released by WWE. Um, Briefly talked about this off the air. Jeff Hardy, with it, just randomly left a house show. Just right in the
Okay.
middle of the match, just got out, jumped into the crowd, left. He was sent home. I'm sure everybody on social media saw the writing on the wall. Um, no, I'm not going to poke a man that has struggled with addiction. That's not
Yeah.
what you and I are about. I just hope that he's okay. You know, like everyone's like, oh, he's going to go here. I don't think he should wrestle right now. I think he should just take a timeout, really. If you're struggling with that stuff again and you keep relapsing doing that stuff, it's not official or anything, but I mean, if you really look at the writing on the wall, if he had COVID, WWE would have said so. If he was injured, WWE would have said so. He was just
Yeah.
released with no explanation, right? We all know that WWE is about image and what they're a public trading company.
Yeah.
So
So we hope for the best, and we're like we just briefly talked about before we came on air, staying positive. We could poke, we could lie, we could. I heard this, I heard that. Um, I guess the most important thing I would say would be we don't want this poor guy to become a statistic.
that's right. I
Like
don't
so,
want to.
so many
Yep,
other people have not been able to cope with their demons, and they've melted away into history.
that's right. So from the Ontario Wildmen, Jeff Hardy, if you're out there, we are rooting for you and we hope that you're okay and we wish you all the best, my friend. Um, Last thing I want to talk about before we get on to what did you watch segment. I just showed you this. Wrestler Hannibal stabs referee. Like for real.
Ah, bizarre.
For
Uh,
real. I mean,
anything. I'm a little bit jaded, Jesse. I some things I just don't believe that it's it's real.
mm,
I just don't. This looks a little on the bizarre side. I don't know much about Hannibal. If it's the same Hannibal guy that does the interviews and the podcasts, other than I think he's Canadian and he's done some really good work, but um, completely uncalled for if he's gone off script. Yeah, completely. Why what are you doing, dude? What are you doing? Seriously, are you having some sort of a meltdown vis-a-vis anything else in your life? Because the pictures were blatantly they were random, completely random. So that makes me think that it was just some
stupidity,
yeah.
if you want to say the word.
Oh,
I'll,
we can say stupid idiot.
yeah. Like for someone to go into business for themselves, I don't like that. Right? Like I respect what these guys do. Right? You guys assist each other with their falls. You trust another person with your body to make sure you don't get hurt. Right?
Yep.
At the end of the day, that's what it is. I can't lift you up, Wes, but if you jump for me, I can safely put you down and make it look safe, right? It's about taking care of each other in the ring. For someone to just pull out a pick or whatever and just keep stabbing him, like even if he was supposed to like quote unquote color for
Yeah.
the show, like bro, you're viciously attacking somebody in front of like. And remember, like if that happened, like, and my daughter was in the crowd, you know what I
Mm.
mean? Or it's just, I don't know. It's not. I don't see a place for it. And Davin, our friend of the show, knows I don't see a place for it because
Yeah.
I've been giving him a little bit of shit lately.
He'd be on the receiving end,
Yeah.
not only the promoter.
Okay, lots to get to. Let's get through our first commercial.
Be sure to follow the Dynasty Wrestling Podcast Network and all of the participating podcasts on social media. The easiest way to find us is on Twitter. You can follow the network at WrestlePods, and you can find all the individual shows at their Twitter accounts. You can find the Wrestling Nostalgia Show at Wrestle Nostalgia, the Ring a Ding Dong Dandy Podcast at Stampede Pod, and the Wildmen Podcast at Wildmen Podcast. Also search us on Facebook for pages and groups. Participate, interact, join the network, and be a fan. Thank you for your support.
Welcome back to What Did You Watch? Wes, what did you watch? I know you were sick and you had some stuff going on, so I watched a bigger show this week or this month.
Really? What'd you watch? What'd you watch? Tell me. Tell me all about it.
I
Did you
watched,
watch the Brady Bunch special?
bro. No, I don't.
Even
Anything past Three's Company, I'm not interested. Because the girl that was blonde in Three's Company was smoking.
yeah.
Anyways, yeah, you're like, how do you know that show? WWE Network on my TV, so I have Bell, so WWE On Demand. I
Is
was
that
on there today.
cable?
Yeah, it's cable. Funny guy. They have a section on there called Old School. So today I watched Madison Square Garden, February 20th, 1984. And it was pretty interesting to watch all the old school stuff, eh?
Mhm.
Like Pat Patterson, Gorilla Monsoon were on commentary. It was pretty different too because when they were explaining commentary, I noticed they were explaining the moves. Like, oh, he's in a head scissors. Oh, that's a good way to get cauliflower ear. It's like, I would have never heard that nowadays. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I wonder maybe if he pushes up on his legs here, he can get out and la. And I'm just like, I really enjoyed the commentary because they
Two
actually explaining the moves.
professionals. Two real
Hmm.
professionals.
Well,
And
Pat
that's
Patterson is a Canadian, one of the best Quebec's ever seen.
yeah.
Maybe one of the best the industry's ever seen. Rest in peace, Pat Patterson.
Yeah.
You know, Gorilla Monsoon too. Gino Morella for the Maple Leaf wrestling fans. You know what I mean?
Longtime guy who worked for Tunney in the 60s. Yep. Who else was on the card?
So get this card. I want to know if you know. You'll probably know a lot of these guys because they work New York. So I'm always interested in seeing 84. So in February, Hulk Hogan was champion. I'll get to all that later. It was wild. So the first match was Jose Luis Rivera
Yeah.
versus Charlie Fulton.
Okay.
You're like, whatever. Who cares?
Well, Jose Luis Rivera was one of the conquistadors in New York for a while, mask guy. After they lifted the mask ban, which was like in '73 or something, couldn't have a masked wrestler in Madison Square Gardens.
How come?
It's against the law.
What?
They had. Oh, okay.
I never knew this.
So there was these guys called one of the guys was called El Olympico, and it might have been Jose Luis Rivera. And I've seen pictures of the guy. I swear to this, Jesse, I'm giving you the visual here, okay?
Yeah.
Take off my glasses. And because I'm bald, you can picture a mask, right? You can't see the hair. And he had it cut out like this.
Around his face.
You can see his whole face.
Holy.
And then Don.
Why even wear a mask?
Why bother? Don Jardine, who was a spoiler Canadian guy, went to New York and they made him wrestle without his mask. the guy had spent 10 years working his mask. But at the time, New York was so far out of vogue, people in Texas wouldn't have known that it was him.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just right before the same time that Vince McMahon Sr. brought in Mil Mascaras, and they didn't make him take his mask off because he wouldn't do it. And then they changed the rules then. So yeah, he was one of the conquistadors. And Charlie Fulton just passed away last year. He was a great guy. I think he worked a couple Wildman shows. He may have, and he was big in Mid Atlantic.
Wow.
So yeah, he had a mask on his head, covering
But
his
showed
head,
his whole face, eyebrows, nose, everything.
the whole thing.
Why even wear a mask? The second match. This is Brian Blair versus Mike Sharp.
Okay.
So I know Brian Blair as the Bees, right?
Yep.
He's also a big part of the Cauliflower Alley Club, I'm pretty sure.
He most certainly is.
Definitely is. Mike Sharp, I know the first thing when I think of Mike Sharp, to be honest with you, Wes, is he was on WrestleMania 1. I just know he was on WrestleMania 1. I always think of the name and I always know the name, but he's just one of those guys that I just can't, if you say the name, like, yeah, I know he was on WrestleMania 1, but I don't know where he is. So let's hear what you know about him.
Canadian guy from Hamilton.
Yes, sir.
Second generation wrestler.
Yep.
His parents, I should say his parents, his dad and his uncle were massive stars, both like 6'5". They were massive stars in California, all over the territories back in the 40s and 50s. In Japan, they were huge.
Do you remember what they went under?
They were Ben and Mike.
Ben and Mike Sharp?
So Mike Sharp was actually Mike Sharp Jr.
Oh, okay, cool.
And
just want to clarify, with everybody listening.
He wore the armband before Orton. He wore a leather armband. He got over. He had some matches against Backlund, like nothing spectacular, but he was known as a really fastidiously clean person. And he passed away a couple years ago too.
Mm-hmm. It was a really great match. That was the match where Brian Blair was in the head scissors, like I was saying earlier, and the commentary, and they're like, oh, look at how tight he has the hold there, and if you apply pressure here and just move slightly to the left, it'll be tighter. And it's just like, oh my God, like real commentary from people who know what's going on.
Yeah.
Because nowadays it's just like, oh, big clothesline, and this guy's popular, and he beat this person, and this is what happened.
And don't forget, we've got t-shirts for sale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The third match was Tony Guevara versus Samoa number 1 with Captain Lou Albano. So it was Alpha.
Yeah, Alpha versus Tony Gurria, who was an office boy for the WWF, held the tag team titles a couple times. New Zealand guy, did absolutely nothing for me. So whatever.
No.
Whatever.
What about this fourth match? Iron Sheik versus Eddie Gilbert. Now this is where it made me laugh because I kind of just put everything together because when the Iron Sheik cut a promo, and I wrote this down because I wanted, he was like, "Puh, Hulk Hogan, he stole the title." So it's obviously right after Hulk Hogan won the title because he's still going on about that. And I spit the Hogan's face. Puh, Paitabaya, Irana. I'm just like, this guy, he kills me every time I hear him talk.
He was just so cool. I believe that he never lost his accent. I don't think he lost his accent. I think that was legit. And it was just so funny. And some of the outtakes, if you see Mean Gene with him, they're just killing themselves laughing because it's just so funny. That's a strange match though. Eddie Gilbert, like we will talk about Eddie Gilbert on our NWCA podcast because he was a really big figure in the Kentucky area when he started out, and he traveled quite a bit, and then he ended up being just absolutely fantastic for a smaller guy. I thought he was great. I thought he was great. Back then, he had absolutely no color or persona whatsoever. He was very plain. But he was into his gimmick, right?
Yeah, here when I was watching him, he was just as white as a ghost. But he
Yeah.
was good. But I knew it was gonna happen. Like the Sheik, the boots, right? It
Yeah.
kills me. I love the boots. It just like it just makes me laugh because every time I look at him, I'm just like, he was the great Arab Hassan, and we're gonna bring that up later. But it's hilarious to me. The fifth match was actually kind of cool. The Invaders versus Rowdy Roddy Piper and Dr. D David Schultz,
Okay, that's pretty interesting.
right? But it was the heat that Dr. D and Piper had coming down. They had police walk him to the ring. I was like, oh, okay. And like when Piper was begging not to be hit, like he's like, no, 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 no. The crowd was going wild. They're like, no, get him. It was something. It's definitely something different. You can tell the passion in the fans too.
I have relatives in New York, near New York City,
Yeah.
and one of my cousin's husbands unfortunately passed from COVID, but he used to go to the Gardens all the time. He loved Superstar Billy Graham, and the roof would blow off that place like crazy. And I had never been in Madison Square Gardens, but I walked by it when I was in New York one time, and it was massive. Like I'm sure it was 23,000 people, and he said they just went berserk. It's completely different type of fans there and matches, right? Even
Hmm.
up in '84, let alone from Bruno's time in the '60s and what have you, right? But man, oh man, Piper knew what to do there like crazy. I've seen him wrestle on TV a few times from Madison Square or on the computer
Hmm.
from Madison Square Gardens, and it's he's like holding them in his hand, like just, and
That
he's
face.
not even playing the bagpipes.
Yeah, he just walks out strutting with that
Yep,
face, and
the Hot
fans
Rod
are just
T-shirt. Yep,
booing him. And Dr. D, well, for people who don't know, Dr. D is the guy who slapped John Stossel in the face.
yep. And I wasn't a big fan in New York from him, but he was pretty good in Southern states. I've seen some videos, and I think he was dynamite in Calgary.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I have a program that I've shown you before, I think, with Dr. D David Schultz on his old Stampede program.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was interesting though to see these guys work, back in '84. Very interesting. The seventh match was that Magnificent Morocco versus Tito Santana. I'm not a Tito Santana fan. I tell you this all the time. I just don't know. I don't get it, you know. But Morocco is jacked.
he's I always liked him when I read about him in the magazines because he started about the time I got into it. And because we never had anything other than Montreal, Buffalo, and Toronto TV here, and even we didn't get Detroit TV in Toronto, but we knew what was going on there, so to speak. We never saw Morocco because he started off in the West Coast in the AWA, and then he went south, and we never saw him. I don't think I saw him until if he, maybe he might have been working in Mid Atlantic in the early '80s, late '70s. And I was like, holy smokes, he was a skinny little tall guy, right? And
Yeah.
his shoulders, I swear to God, they're like volleyballs on him. He was so massive. I liked him. I always liked him. I thought he was great, and
Yeah.
he was a great heel. He had a great face for a heel, but I thought he was a pretty good face too. Yeah,
Hmm.
like him.
It was cool to see, like two guys who I know, both Hall of Famers in WWE, right? So I was like, hey, some people I know.
Uh, Chico is whatever.
The eighth match was the Masked Superstar versus Andre the Giant.
Okay.
Now we all know who's going to win there, but it was still fun for me to watch Andre because again, I never got to see him at the Gardens. I never got to see him perform. I never even got to see him walk down the ramp or stand at a ring. So for me and people like my age who didn't get to see him, this is how we do it. We have to go back in the history books, which is again why we do all the stuff that we do to
Yeah.
keep it alive, right? So to see Andre do the stepping on his opponent and sitting on him, and even though like he would even sell for his opponent like headlock, he'd be like, oh my god, like he actually hit me in the face. He's not like, oh, it doesn't hurt because I'm 7'4" or whatever.
Yeah.
He actually would work.
I think he did a better job of working with the guys he liked, and I'm sure he liked the Mass Superstar. I'm sure he did, uh,
Mm-hmm.
because he was really talented, very, very like ridiculously talented, right? And I thought Mass Superstar was great. He was one of my favorites in Mid Atlantic when he was top dog there,
Yeah.
and when he came to WWF, it didn't change whatsoever because he was still talented and still really good. And then when they went to Demolition, he was still just as good, right? He was getting older, but he was still just as good.
Yo, Demolition. I love Demolition. You know me, I love Demolition. I love those 80s tag teams. But then again, right, that's the difference, right? Like my era grew up with that. The
Yeah,
color painting like tag teams with Demolition and the Hart Foundation. LOD was huge. I used to love Legion of Doom. You know what I mean? Just because I like the big shoulder pads and the spikes and stuff like that. So, well, your favorite wrestler was on the show too, Hulk Hogan.
I bet he was.
Yeah, and he defended the WWF title and kicked Paul Orndorff's butt. It was awesome.
8 minutes and 34 seconds.
Yeah, ended with a leg drop, baby.
Oh, you're kidding. I
Yeah.
thought you used the Frankensteiner off the top rope.
No,
No,
no.
not this.
Hogan using a Frankenstein is like me eating cauliflower, bro, or liver. I'd never do it.
Oh,
Nope. It. I don't care what anybody says. Hogan's the man. He controls the crowd like nobody. You got to give him that at least.
yeah. I posted a picture yesterday just for you,
Yes, I did. I saw it. I loved it.
and I was sitting so far away, but I was lucky I had a telephoto lens. And that picture completely shows exactly what you saw on the video last night and what that picture really shows us from Maple Leaf Gardens. It's this exact same thing. Everybody was going berserk, just berserk. And it was a different crowd in Maple Leaf Gardens, and it was everything, right? So it's just I went because I had to see Terry Funk, and even in his state that he was in then, but the crowd and the picture of Hogan standing on the ramp and just like, hey, I'm here. And it's like, boom, the roof goes off, and he turns around and faces the other way. The roof goes off again. He did like one step and then boom again. Crazy heat, crazy.
Buddy, eating out of the palm of his hands like a bird in a
Yeah,
park.
yeah,
Like, it would be like, it's the same. I would say Ric Flair can do it too. Ric Flair can get a crowd. You know what I
yeah,
mean? You witnessed it. Like,
yeah.
you've seen Flair many times. He can control a crowd. Hogan can control a crowd too. He's just, but like in this 1984, he just won the belt. It's like hype. Like, hey,
I'm
we're
sure.
starting the Hogan era. And
Yeah,
he's like cutting a promo with Vince McMahon, and he comes in, oh, something vicious Vince. And I'm like, vicious Vince? Like, first time I've ever heard that, so that
yeah.
made me laugh. But yeah, that's what I watched this week. I know I did a lot because you were sick, so don't worry about it. Next month, Wes is going to be back on the What Did You Watch wagon. But
I
we
will
got
tell.
a.
Not, and it's not that I don't watch anything. I do. I watch stuff all the time. But it's while I'm waiting at a red light, throwing my UPS packages out the window
Yeah, exactly.
at people's houses.
Don't
Not
worry about it.
not at, not out the window at just random cars and stuff.
This guy kills me. Uh, Today, like we said earlier, we're going to do Angelo Mosca. He wrestled for 26 years. And like we said, out of that 26 years, we're only going to focus on the Ontario stuff. Uh, right? So we're going to cover his 5-time Canadian heavyweight title, some of his rivals in Ontario, where he worked, all that stuff. Wes, you got a favorite Angelo Mosca story or a memory or anything like that before we go to the commercial?
I went to a card at Maple Leaf Gardens once, and it was one of the first. I think it might have been a WWF card that was sort of mixed still with the Canadian guys when they were first starting like the Toronto guys.
Yeah.
And the fourth match was Mosca versus the Iron Sheik. And this was like 2 or 3 or 4 years after the heat was off. And it was strange because they did the exact same thing and it just wasn't there, which was kind of strange, right? People, some guys try to hold on like the Sheik, like, working till you're in your 65 or whatever. Sheik never did anything in the ring, so as long as he could get up the steps and into the ring, he did his mayhem, right? Mosca, I think, was getting a little long in the tooth to be anywhere near the top in Maple Leaf Gardens, even though he ruled for sure, without a doubt. He packed in good houses. I don't want to get into any more right now, but he packed in good houses. He was a draw for sure.
Yeah, and we're going to talk all about King Kong Masa as soon as we come back.
Grand River Tea is proud to be sponsoring the Ontario Wildmen Wrestling Podcast, produced by Dave Dynasty Podcast Network, with Wes and Jess providing the Ontario wrestling historical content. Grand River Tea is providing their tea of choice, Dropkick Yopon. An ancient plant grown wild in the southern United States, Yopon is the only caffeinated plant native to North America. It has been used by Native Americans and early settlers in North America for decades. It's organic, sustainably wild, harvested, and hand-picked, and is only touched while growing by sunshine and rain. Dropkick Yopon is a medium roast tea that has amazing aroma of maple and a beautiful golden color when brewed either cold or hot. Here at Grand River Tea, we take our sourcing seriously, and we want to reduce our carbon footprint and make our teas as sustainable as possible. All our loose leaf teas are gluten-free, vegan, dairy-free, and have no sugar. So put your kettle on and enjoy some Grand River Tea.
Angelo Mosca was born February 12th, 1937 in Waltham, Massachusetts. Mosca had a great football career, leading his way to being drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles. Your boy, Jesse's favorite football team of all time, the Philadelphia Eagles.
Get out!
Seriously.
Suck. They're terrible.
They suck this year. Who cares? We're in a rebuilding stage.
You've been in a rebuilding stage for like 40 years.
What are you talking about? We just won the Super Bowl like 5 years ago.
Once.
Get out of here.
Cleveland Browns, baby. Yeah.
Oh my God. Although being drafted to the NFL, it would be the Canadian Football League where the people of Ontario, Canada would get their first sighting of Angelo Mosca. Wes, I think it's important now we stop, explain the Canadian Football League because it is vastly different from the NFL, like hugely different.
It is. It's massively different, and it always has been different. It was when I was young, it was completely made fun of because they always said, "Takes you 4 downs to catch a touchdown," and it's like, you know what? I'd rather have points and excitement on my game than 8 to 7 games. I get them both. I like them both. I always have. Bigger playing field, wider, longer.
We do 3 downs. The ball's bigger, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. Different size ball. Angelo came here because of money. We will get into this a little bit later, but he was a self-promoter, even probably when he was a teenager. So we put a ton of pictures and a ton of all sorts of things on Mosca on our pages over the last month or so since his passing, and everyone's more than willing to check that out on our Ontario Wrestling Clippings of the Past page and our Tribute to the Wildman page, Facebook pages.
You got to give a shout out to the Maple Leaf Wrestling Group too. Barry Hatchett does a great job over there. He's been posting a lot of great stuff.
Yeah. So we're going to get into his promotion of himself after, but big difference for money-wise back in the day. That's what it was. It was all money.
Yeah, he played for the Hamilton Tiger Cats in 58 to 59, the Ottawa Rough Riders in 1960 to 1961, the Montreal Alouettes 1962, and then back to Hamilton from 62 to 72. I mean, damn, bro, like that's a good career still.
To
Anyways,
play top level.
yeah,
Top level lineman for 14 years or whatever that is. Yeah, that's a big deal. Had to
yeah.
have been one massive physical specimen, like a tank, like a truck, right? Like a Mack truck.
Every time I bring up the CFL and wrestling to the older crowd, they always bring up Mosca.
Yeah.
Being cited by Quebec promoter Eddie Quinn, Mosca started wrestling in the off seasons of the CFL. According to the Verne records, his first match in Ontario was November 11th, 1969 against Porky the Pig. Then he returned twice in December, defeating Eric the Red and once again Porky the Pig. In 1972, Mosca retired from the gridiron and turned full pro for the squared circle. Now, this is kind of a common thing back then, no, Wes?
Oh, for sure. Some great NFL players did it. The top one being would be Ernie Ladd, the one of the most famous NFL players, and another crazy self promoter. Turned to wrestling and just made a killing. He wrestled he was the self-proclaimed king of wrestling before Jerry Lawler ever did it, and he was a great star. I have written a chapter in the book about these two guys. It's entitled "The Tale of the Tape," which they used to do back in the old days with boxing. 6'3", 6'4". His chest was 50 inches. His chest was whatever.
Yeah, they do something similar nowadays again.
Yeah. And I compared them right down to awards won, years played, years wrestled, achievements in the wrestling ring. It was so common for big guys to go into wrestling from football because football had to have the size, right? You had to have the size. And NHL players were never going to be wrestlers because they're usually so lithe and slender, strong and skilled, but nowhere near a 6'9" lineman.
Or Gene Kiniski, another great example.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Wahoo McDaniel wasn't he a football player? I think now I'm not going to mix the leagues up, NFL and CFL. We're talking about both, but if we have to talk players that converted to the ring, even Bruiser Brody, he played in the NFL for 5 years before he turned full pro. So back then it's like I was talking to my uncle about this too. He's like, it was so common. He's like, because you wrestle in the winter and the summer into the winter, because CFL only run like CFL just ended now,
Yeah.
right in December. The Grey Cup was literally yesterday.
So many guys from the CFL work for either Calgary or British Columbia or Ontario. Lots of.
Mm-hmm.
I have done a post on one of the pages a couple of years ago about. I can't remember the guy's name. Guys who played for the something to do with guys who played for the Argos, Toronto Argonauts, our CFL football team in Toronto, that wrestled even for a season or two because they were pushed. The promoters were always looking for guys that were well known. And Mosca didn't have to. Everybody knew him. Everybody knew him, and his infamous hit in the Grey Cup game in '63, right? So yeah, everybody knew Mosca.
Now this was kind of a shock to me, but of all 1970, he wasn't even in Ontario. He returned to the ring in Toronto June 21st, 1971, but he lost. And then in 1972, he came to Ottawa twice. And in 1973, he worked for the Wildmen, which would continue for half the year of 1974. So Wes, you're the Wildman guy. Everyone comes to you for the Wildman. Would you say the Wildman helped Mosca become popular within Ontario? Because if you really look at what we just talked about, he's really mostly in the States. right? Until mid 70s. Now he's working for the Wildmen, going around Ontario where people are really getting to know him.
He did some work in the early 70s for Tunney in some spot shows like London. Not as much Maple Leaf Gardens, like as you said, but some spot shows for London, Niagara Falls, Kitchener, obviously Hamilton. He would do some spot shows, but very, very few. He's working in between his football season, and he was getting himself out there. Yeah, so he was going to California or going to Texas in the off season. So when it comes to the Wildman, we're we're looking at a guy who didn't have to do anything. All the Wildman McKigney had to do was put Mosca's face on his ad, sell it.
He was that popular in Ontario? Because you got to remember, I didn't see the Mosca hit or anything like that.
You're using the word popular. Let's put it this way. He was, for Dave, the few years that he worked for Dave, about a year and a half, where he basically main evented like right through, going against Eric the Red, Tony, Eric the Red, and some other guys, and Stomper in '74. He was so well known and disliked because of his persona on the football field, but everybody knew his name, so that when Dave booked him as a babyface, all he had to do was work as a babyface. I mean, guys knew what to do, right? So Dave definitely made him popular here. We'll get into this a little later, but yeah, he worked for close to 2 years off and on for Dave, doing the whole circuit. I mean, like the summer of '73 and the summer of '74, they just right through.
That's crazy, man. Like, and when he was Westmead's Ontario circuit, now you got to remember in the mid 70s, so you go back and check out our Dave versus Frank episode. So that was in 71.
71,
right?
Yeah.
So now we are talking, and so right in 71, Dave and Frank Tunney were not really talking, right? And now 73, 74, you're saying he went around with the Wildmen. So I mean, Dave had to do something, I guess, because with such a rocky relationship, right? You never know. And everybody knows that Tunney ran Ontario, right? It was his thing. Toronto was his city, right? So
it was his province, and he thought he owned it. And the Wildman just said, well, Tunney's not running Belleville. Tunney's not running Leamington.
Sault Ste. Marie.
Yeah, Tunney's not running Huntsville, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those are my towns now. And Dave always said that they were his towns because they had dropped by the wayside. There was wrestling in places that in the 50s that had like less than 1,000 people, but they had an empty arena in the summer. So Tunney hit them all. He hit them all, but I don't know if it was too much for him trying to put on 2 or 3 shows a night every week throughout the summer season. Dave and Frank had a love-hate relationship, especially around this time. Yeah.
Yeah. In 1975, King Kong Mosca came to Toronto to face Lou Klein. Did I say that right? Because Gavin will kill me.
Lou Klein. Yeah.
Before going back to the States and returning only once in 1976, where he lost to Andre the Giant by countout. Obviously, no one's going to beat the Giant.
No.
In 1977, he only had 3 matches in Ontario. So, Wes, I have to ask you if, at this moment, would you consider King Kong Mosca a major name in the United States over Canada, even though he had ties to the CFL?
Oh, 100%. I know we're only talking basically about his career in Ontario, but he would come and go. So I guess a lot of the Toronto, Ontario kind of area guys would come back in the summertime, whether they worked for Frank or the Wildman, so they could come home from wherever they were. Plus, it's really nice to go somewhere warm and work all winter long, like in Texas or in California or Florida, right? He had a few matches, as you stated. I remember the push on that Andre the Giant match, actually, because
Really?
yeah, he was pushed as the only guy. Well, was he? Mosca would have said it himself. We didn't have to be told what to say. He was pushed. I remember exactly. I don't know why, for some reason. I know I have the clipping in one of my booklets, but um, he was going to be the guy who brought the Giant down. He was big enough. He was tough enough. He was mean enough. He was rough enough to bring the Giant down. And like you said, no one beats the Giant, right?
Nope.
Although it was a count out, so proving that he was a big enough star that he wasn't going to get pinned, right?
Fair enough. I never even thought about it like that actually until you said that.
Yeah.
But so with a big match like that in Toronto, right? You have to wonder if maybe working for the Wildman kind of benefited for Mosca to get Frank Tunney's attention.
I don't know if it did, because there was a bit of space between 74 and 76. So, and
Mm-hmm.
Mosca was going back and forth from Northern California, Texas.
Yeah, he was a huge star in Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah, and crazy star in Mid Atlantic. When they first started coming, really getting popular, really going big time. Mosca was big there. He in the early 70s. It's funny because he said that he didn't work here too often in the early 70s, but he did a lot of Detroit. He did a lot of Pittsburgh for Bruno because he was a big guy. So um, a great opponent for Bruno, but he never worked at New York. He only worked Bruno's circuit, which was Pittsburgh and
Boston.
No, not even Boston, Pennsylvania.
Really?
Yeah, Pennsylvania, upper Pennsylvania, a bit into Ohio. He would travel, if he was here, he would travel down with Dave and Eric the Red and all these guys because Dave was bringing guys down for TV for Bruno, like the TV enhancement guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Wow.
but he was going back and forth, and he was a big enough star by this time that he could pick and choose where he wanted to go. I mean,
Yeah.
he could go somewhere and stay there, and like he did in Stampede. In Stampede, he'd go there and he'd stay there for 8 months. Like it wasn't like just a few shots. It was for the whole season or half the season, right? I have him working in Stampede in 1970 for practically the whole year. Like 11 months, I think he worked in Stampede.
Mm-hmm. Well, a
So
lot of guys started out in Stampede with
yeah,
Stu. Even Abdullah the Butcher started out there.
and a big tag team in Stampede back in 1970 was a guy named Coleman and Mosca. They were a big tag team.
Really, eh?
Yeah,
Well, I guess
morphed into Superstar Billy Graham.
there you go. It's kind of cool too because really all you have to put is former CFL player anywhere across Canada
Yeah,
or on the ad, and then it's like an attraction, like you said. Even Dave knew what he had, right? He was an attraction.
yep.
And you are right, because when I was looking into him, he was all over the States. He won championships all over the States and stuff like that. So like he's well established on the scene in I would say at this point in time in his career.
Yeah, and he
So,
was good. He was good enough to. I think he was a good. I mean, he's not obviously he wasn't Bob Backlund technical guy, but he was
mhm.
good enough as a face or as a heel to main event. And he was a big guy. He was like 6'5". He's like 280 or something. He was a big guy, and he was such a promoter that reminds. We were talking about the longevity of Watson and the careers that Kiniski and Watson had together. And I
Yeah,
consider Gene Kiniski just bar none, practically the best talker ever. Just crazy, right? Because he knew how to interject himself. He knew how to put himself into the TV so that the people would come out to the shows. Mosca was no different whatsoever. Just a big, huge, crazy, booming voice, and he had no problems doing interviews. He had no problems being an animal on TV, like kind of if he was being a heel, being a
yeah.
crazy person, not like a bloodletting, crazy berserk guy, but a big, massive bully kind of guy, right?
Do you think he was better as a heel or a face?
I think he's better as a heel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When I
definitely.
was talking to Barry, he said the same thing. He said that even when he came to Toronto and he still was the thing, it's like he was acting to be good. He was just a natural heel
Yeah,
almost.
definitely. And you know what? I don't think I ever saw him beg off, um, which is something most guys have to do in their life, in their ring. And I don't think I ever saw him beg off, like putting his hands behind his back, going, "No, no, 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 don't hit me, don't hit me."
Hmm.
He was just forward, nothing but moving forward, right? And he's a
Like a
pretty good bleeder. He had no problem with that.
That's
Yeah,
a big reason I like Bulldog Brower. Like you know how I like him, but like he was like that too, just forward, forward, forward.
just you know what? Don't get me started about Bulldog Brower. What a just a crazy kind of human being. 5'8" or whatever, and like
Hmm.
280 pounds, and like the guy was just unbelievable. And man, he threw a good punch and a great forearm.
Okay, let's get back to Mosca.
Yeah,
In July of 1980, things really took off for King Kong Mosca here in Ontario as he won the biggest Maple Leaf Wrestling title available, the NWA Canadian Heavyweight Championship. He would defeat the great Arab Hassan, who would later be known in WAF as the Iron Sheik. This rival would continue for the rest of 1980 in Toronto, as the great Arab Hassan would win the title back in August of 1980, and Moscow would win it right back in December of 1980. This must have been something, though. The great Arab Hassan. I have to say it like that because of his freaking voice. Hassan, Hogan, I spit on you. Like,
the and
you
it's
remember this coming on, right? Because I've seen clippings, sorry, but of like Brampton and Kitchener. Like, these guys didn't just stay in Toronto; they did the Ontario circuit for
they did the
tons.
circuit for sure because it was a big sell. Again, Mosca could bring the crowd, put him on TV, give him a microphone, and he's gonna talk them into the building. And the Iron, the Iron Sheik was so hated at the time. They weren't trying to rekindle the Sheik, but they were trying to rekindle the viciousness. And I remember seeing, um, uh, might have been TV. Moscow's doing an interview. The Sheik comes in and is shooting off his mouth and with his accent and everything, and they get into a little tussle. And the Iron Sheik's pointing at the boot, right? Pointing at the boot, pointing at the boot, pointing at the boot, and then he gives Mosca one kick, like one kick in the head, and Mosca comes up, he's gushing of blood, right? And they both did a great job of what they were supposed to do. Um, when Iron Sheik was in the Mid Atlantic, and he supposedly was really shit, and he got canned the second time around he was there, but he was doing the with the same boots. He was doing the loaded boot where he kicked the toe
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
right, and he wasn't even touching somebody. And they were bleeding. Um, Mosca at that time, I don't know why, but he was so huge. It was just the right place at the right time. Tunney was
Hmm.
looking for the next guy. He
Yeah,
couldn't find
because the
it.
Sheik was pushed out at
Yeah,
this
he
time.
couldn't find it in Dewey. Dewey was nothing wrong with Dewey. Dewey was a great wrestler. I like Dewey Robertson. But he just didn't have it. He just didn't have that pizzazz, right? Dewey. Then the belt went to Greg Valentine had the Canadian belt for a while, and then passed through a couple. I'm losing my train of thought here. It passed through a couple other hands, and Dino Bravo left with the belt for he just disappeared. But Mosca was everything to that belt, and everything to Maple Leaf Wrestling for sure.
Hmm. Interesting. That's very interesting. It's crazy too. Like, when did he change his name from the Great Arab Hassan to the Iron Sheik of Iran?
It was the Great Hossein, Hossien, like some Middle East leader's name,
Yeah, yeah, right.
and and they were
Great El Posan.
they were
I
going
say
back and,
Posan.
they were going back and forth, right? In Middle Atlantic, he was this, he was, and then he just when he finally got to the WWF, he was the Iron Sheik. Whatever.
There's only one Sheik, bud.
Yeah.
As you know. King Kong Mosca would keep the Canadian heavyweight title from December of 1980 until July 1981, where he did a quick transitional change in the same month with Mr. Fuji. In September of 1981, King Kong Mosca would face Big John Studd and lose the Canadian heavyweight title. Mosca would meet Big John Studd in January of 1982, and he would keep the biggest title to hold in Toronto until July of 1983, when Mosca would finally lose it to Sergeant Slaughter. But once again, he would win it back in 1984 off Slaughter. Now, you got to notice a little bit of a pattern here, Wes. He'd lose the title in the summer months. What do you think? Would he take the summer out working for the Bearman, or would he take the summer work for the, in the States?
I think they would have been still doing matches, like rematches, because these guys didn't hold the belt for too long.
No, guys would come to Toronto, they would win the title, then the next weekend they would lose it.
Yeah, so it was like maybe 3 matches or 4 matches and they'd win. Much like the Sheik matches with some of the big guys in the 70s. They would have a build up to Lord Athol Leighton and would always wrestle the Sheik, and Bobo Brazil would always wrestle the Sheik in the middle of the summer, build the crowd up, and at Christmas time, build the crowd up. Just for a sec, I want to go back for a second. I just remembered something.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got here in 1977, he only had 3 matches in Ontario. And I remember when the Sheik left in 77.
Yeah. Toronto forced him out. We're going to talk about that next year in February.
There was a lull in the matches from maybe August to October. Mm-hmm. And they started bringing in the AWA guys, which was fantastic. And at the time, we were getting AWA TV, so there was a big feud between Mosca and Peter Maivia. And I saw one of their matches at the Maple Leaf Gardens when he was a heel, and it just dawned on me it was probably in late 77 or 78 that I saw one of those matches, and it was on as the maybe third last match, but also, I mean, you couldn't. Mosca, even though he had a reputation, he was playing a heel at the time, and they weren't working here regular. It was just on from AWA TV, so they couldn't put him on like in the main event or anything. But Nick Bockwinkel would have been in the main event or something like that. But I do remember it was a pretty good match, and they I think Mosca was disqualified for leaving the ring and just counted out.
Yep, such a heel thing to do.
Yeah.
Out of the last 3, though, that I named, going back to this, Fuji, Big John Studd, Sergeant Slaughter, I mean, he's not facing nobodies. You know what I mean? Like, we all know who I know who Mr. Fuji is. Mr. Fuji, I only know him as a manager. You keep telling me to watch his wrestling stuff because he could actually really work. And I know who Big John Studd and Sergeant Slaughter is. So, like, which one do you think was the biggest out of those 3? Like, for Mosca, I would say personally, Slaughter and Mosca would have been a freaking war. It would have been a war.
I was never a big fan of Big John Studd. I mean, I don't like Mr. Fuji. I like Mr. Fuji more than I like Big John Studd. So Slaughter definitely, without even blinking. They could both big guys that could work and do things in the ring other than just hitting each other and pounding. John Studd was awful, just awful. He was he was big, but he was. I didn't like him at all. Never did.
Yeah, I think I have clippings with Mosca versus Slaughter, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that would have been awesome." Would have been a war. 2 big guys going at it. I gotta ask you though, this beginning of the '80s to the mid '80s here, 1985. Would that be the time Angelo Mosca Jr. started wrestling?
I'm quite sure. Yeah, there was some heat in New York with Mosca got a gig doing the commentary with Vince McMahon Jr.
Yeah, I
and
heard he won an award for worst commentator or something like that.
he was not very good. But he knew the holds. This is the thing. McMahon never cared about the holds ever, 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 ever. So you watch some of that 1984 stuff or earlier, and with him doing the commentary, and he doesn't talk about any holds. He just talks about the upcoming shows and it's great to see Andre or whoever, right? And
Yeah, big slam would come. Oh, I'm high. What a slam! Or what? Yeah, you got him there.
I remember there is a video of Mosca saying goodbye to Vince, shaking his hand and everything, because then he's going to go manage and take care of his son starting out. And he started out Mid-Atlantic, and he did pretty good for a kid, but also he just didn't have the size, didn't have the. His son was really good looking. Well, he was really good looking
He had the look.
as opposed to his dad. So he could never have been a heel. And he was. They said he just wasn't very good. He could do what he had to do, but he wasn't. He was never going to make it big. And then, of course, that's why he eventually came back and headlined the Wildman cards for.
We're having some audio issue here.
I can hear you fine.
Oh, okay. It just skipped on my side. Sorry about that. Poor connection, it says here. Sorry about that. Completely cut us. Oh, no, we're good. We're good. We're set.
I wasn't skipping.
Okay, sorry. Go back and say that what you were saying again, Wes. He worked in Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah,
and he was really good looking. He didn't have the size.
Yeah, he just didn't have the size or the drive, I guess, mostly. So Angelo took him on the road with him, tried to get him into places, and he just didn't have it.
Dave used him.
Yeah, well, he was fine here, and that's why he headlined for Dave for 2 summers in a row on the main events, right? Because he had a name.
Yeah, I have Mosca Jr. versus Sheik ads in my findings.
Yeah, and he, if you can do half decent match, but you're working with Chris Colt or Johnny Valiant, you're going to look good, because that's most of the guys that he worked against here in Ontario, right? For the Wild.
This is going to be fun because you were actually here. In 1986, Angelo Mosca retired from the ring. However, he did something in Ontario people still talk about to this day. Mosca Mania. Wes, you were there. Dusty Rhodes versus Ric Flair. He tried to keep the NWA alive, didn't he?
He certainly did. It was, at the time, I remember thinking, oh, this is fantastic. This is going to be so, even if I have to go to Hamilton to watch the NWA once a month, it's going to be so much fun. It was a great card. At the time, it's funny because I didn't drive at the time. I didn't have a license because I just didn't. And I took the GO train, the GO bus, Hamilton Transit to get to. I knew where the arena was, and I went by myself. But I had a camera also, so I posted pictures of that, and I have tons more pictures to post. Really interesting card. I liked the whole aspect of the card. Some local guys got a big payday. One of my favorite guys from the Wildman circuit, Vic Rossitani, it was his last match. Our friend Farmer Pete was on the card. Danny Johnson was on the card, whose son is a friend of the Wildman's page. And Duncan McTavish, he was one of the referees. And Wayne Cashman was also a referee. One of the things that Mosca did was bring back Norm Kimber as the ring announcer, who was the Toronto ring announcer for years, who had been fired or got rid of because they didn't want him anymore. The WWF was using their own guys, and they didn't need Norm anymore. That got a massive hoot out of and there was quite a few people, and I'd say there was 8,000 to 10,000 people in the Coliseum in Hamilton. Jimmy Valiant versus Abdullah the Butcher. Road Warriors versus Baron von Raschke and Nikita Koloff.
That would have been awesome.
Sergeant Slaughter versus someone. I don't have it written down. Yeah. So it was a pretty good card, and we were the NWA fans were so excited because we thought that this was going to be a new thing coming on, and unfortunately it just went.
Well, he did two of them, no?
The second one wasn't as good. I didn't go, and there was issues with money, and then Mosca eventually went with Milta Breskin, who had worked with George Cannon for years and years and years, and they put together, and we'll talk about that after, I'm sure. But yeah, it was a big deal too. The Toronto newspapers that liked wrestling would do anything for the NWA and quote Frank Tunney's time. So that's why I posted that picture on our page last week, front page picture of a Toronto newspaper, and the card wasn't even in Toronto. And great picture of Ric Flair and Baby Doll in the picture, who was managing Dusty Rhodes at the time. There was Mosca put in a lot of time to promote that, a lot of time everywhere. It was a big, big deal.
Yeah, his promotion, wasn't it called Pro Wrestling Canada or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I think I have that a program I bought off of Greg, from the Mosca Mania stuff. And I love the story too, that when he threw the Mosca and he used all NWA guys, that when Ric Flair came here, he was supposed to be the heel, but no one booed Ric Flair. They just refused to boo Ric here because Ric Flair in Ontario is like a god.
Yeah, they basically, and the story's been passed around, but they basically switched during the match, which was, if Ric Flair owned anything, he could do anything here. So in Toronto or Hamilton, or I know he worked in Kitchener, a few spot shows around when he had time to, but excuse me, probably not as NWA champion, but before that or after when he wasn't.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. It was a big deal with Dusty and Ric Flair main eventing, and I'm sure Mosca must have paid them a fortune, absolute fortune. As Flair was I don't know what the NWA champion was. I can't remember what the stats are. X amount per. It was, a lot of times it was a 3-match set, so you'd be coming one match in May, one match in June, one match in July, and you were guaranteed you were going to get $20,000 or $25,000 or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
The boys, the main eventers, would have made a pile of money on that show, and tickets were reasonably priced. I didn't have an issue with money at the time, so it didn't matter to me. But yeah,
cool. Exactly. That's pretty cool though, man. That he would do that and try to keep, because you got to think like 86. Like Vince is pretty much three years officially, 3 or 4 years officially into his national takeover.
Yeah.
He's buying up territories like crazy, like it's just wild. And then Mosca retires and he goes, yo, I'm going to throw my own show and I'm going to try to keep the old school wrestling alive. It just, too bad Jack Tunney left and went with the WWF, and for all the WWF fans, we all know who Jack Tunney played on television. He was the main guy there for a lot of stuff. Anyways, in 1987, Angelo Mosca was inducted into the Canadian Football League Hall of Fame. In 2011, Angelo Mosca would release a book, Tell It to My Face. Wes, did you read that book?
I did not, and I've never even seen it.
Nope, I didn't know about it either, to be fair.
But do you know what that means? Tell it
to my face? No.
Okay, so in the 60s, he did commercials for razor blades, like or something, and he'd be pretending he'd be shaving, and he'd say, if these razor blades don't work for you, you tell it to my face.
That's freaking hilarious. See, this is why we do the show. A little fun stats. 2015, Angelo Mosca was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. But that's not what all that happened to Mosca in 2015. Angelo Mosca was honored by the Hamilton Tiger Cats and had his jersey retired by the team. And if you're a sports fan, you know that's a pretty dang big deal. On November 6th, 2021, Angelo Mosca finally laid his head to rest. Reporting on his passing, Dave Meltzer even called him a Canadian sports icon, which is kind of funny considering he was really American, but he was so popular here. Wes, with all his titles outside of Canada and his success everywhere in pro wrestling, you know, even though he's born American, would you have to agree with Meltzer's statement of being a Canadian sports icon?
Without a doubt. I'm sure he was a Canadian citizen because he
definitely had dual.
He lived here long enough. He's a really proud guy. He was a really, really proud guy. People that I've talked to about him briefly said that if he was your friend, he was the greatest pal ever. But he was very proud. He was really proud of wrestling. He was very adamant about the camaraderie that the boys had, and you know, going around the circuits. If he was working for the Wildmen or the Tunney circuit when he was really, really big and he was the Canadian heavyweight champion, it would have been a big deal to have been his pal or to have been his confidant at the time because he was huge. I wouldn't say he was any in his peak. I wouldn't say he was any less than Gene Kiniski. Famous wise for self-promotion. He was always on TV. He was always in the newspaper. Jesse, I have probably 20 articles downstairs of newspaper clippings where he was just shooting the breeze with some reporter somewhere and they did a little story because he wanted to promote something. He definitely had the gift of gab and he was definitely a Canadian sports icon. People my age, I could even ask my dad, or you could ask your dad. You say, hey, Dad, what does number 68 mean to you? Without a doubt, everybody knows who it is.
Yama Yager?
I hate Yager. I always hated him.
Oh, man.
He was a goal suck.
No, but just wraps up his career in Ontario. Like I said, we focus only on the Ontario side of things, but it's hard to argue. Like, he was huge here. CFL, you know, his ties with the CFL. Even Greg had him at the Titans dinners. Did you meet him at the Titans dinner?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Got an autograph. Actually, I got a couple autographs from Angelo. At Titans dinner and then somewhere else. I can't remember. Somewhere else I met him. And
yeah.
He was a little ornery sometimes, and he was a bit ornery one time. I asked him for an autograph and just briefly talked about the Wildman, and he just kind of blew me off, which was like whatever, right? He's got more important people to see and talk to.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother me at all whatsoever, right?
No, that's fair. What were you going to say? Anything on Mosca before we continue?
No,
anything you want to wrap up?
Just looking at my notes and seeing that he was a really big deal in Mid-Atlantic, and then that probably helped him get over here because the people had seen him on TV when the Mid-Atlantic was showing here too. So yeah, big star. And like I say, and that small period of time, he was no more or no less more popular or unpopular than Kiniski, for sure. Great self-promoter, and rest in peace.
Yeah, I agree. Rest in peace, Angelo.
Support all of the podcasts here on the Dynasty Wrestling Podcast Network. The best way to do that is go to our Pro Wrestling Tees store. It is at PROWRESTLINGTEES.com/TheDaveDynasty. There you will find all of the shirts that we offer: I Heart Old School Wrestling, Bruiser Buddy, the Podcast Mask shirt, and of course, the official shirts for the Ontario Wildmen and the Ring a Ding Dong Dandy podcast. Visit PROWRESTLINGTEES.com/The Dave Dynasty, order a shirt, and support the network. If you would also like to support, you can join our Patreon. It's at patreon.com/Dave Dynasty. There you will get exclusive audio and video clips, early releases on podcasts, and much, much more. And if you would just like to make one-time contributions to support us, you go to paypal.me/The Dave Dynasty. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for listening. Continue to support independent wrestling podcast.
Another episode in the books for us, Wes. It was good talking about Angelo Mosca. I learned a lot, even from you. You know, the tell it to my face thing was actually kind of funny. It's crazy to know that he was that big, and for Dave Meltzer to call him a Canadian sports icon, and being born in the States, he retired here, he lived here, his wife was from here. It's by far it's good to cover successful performers that truly made an impact in Ontario wrestling history.
Definitely. He was born in Massachusetts. He was American, no doubt about it. He played his college football there, but he made his fame here. He just came here. So he will be no doubt an honorary Canadian in my books for forever.
I agree, 100%.
Yeah.
As of late, the followers of our show would notice that Wes and I are starting a new show, but we don't want to get everyone twisted up. We are still going to do this show, but we want to do a show where we have video and we can show the clippings and be more interactive with you guys who are listening to us monthly. Because I think I shouldn't say you and I, Wes, have both talked about it for a very long time and said, hey, let's not limit ourselves to Ontario. You and I love pro wrestling history. So let's talk about everything, anything, and everywhere. And that's why we started the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance. And already we have over almost 220 members. It's almost been like 2.5 weeks.
Yep.
A lot of interactive stuff is happening. We literally post every day. We like on this day, stuff from Alabama to New Zealand to South Africa. Tons of stuff on there already. And I'm having fun, and I can't wait to continue and start this stuff.
It's a dream come true again, another dream come true, that we're going to be able to talk about anything that we want about wrestling history. And we're going to be going, and I'm no expert. I'm just a person who likes it. That's all. I'm no expert. I don't know nothing about the 30s or the 20s or the 40s. But on the same note, we're going to touch still on that because we have to, because they begat someone else who begat someone else who begat someone else. And last night I was doing a bit of research. I found this awesome story. Well, it's not a story. It's an awesome tie of how a city and its promoters and its promotion morphed from 1920s to the 1970s. And I'm working on the story. I'm going to be posting it on the page, and then we can talk about it if you want on the podcast. But the podcast is going to be fantastic because, yes, people are going to be able to see, as I'm holding something up right now, they're going to be able to see what it's all about, and the clippings will be, and it's not just clippings, it's stories, it's advertisements, it's results, anything that we can get a hold of. We've got people from all over North America posting on our page already, which is absolutely awesome. We're going reaching out all over the world for people. My friend in Australia is just pumped about it. He is so excited. So I'm looking forward to getting him to help us out with posting some stuff from Australia. And I have a connection with a hidden resource for Australian clippings, but it's hit and miss. So it's hard to pinpoint things from Australia. So hopefully he can help us out with that. So it's a dream come true for sure again, and we're gonna have so much fun with this. I don't know what kind of shape it's gonna take, but I know it's gonna be fun, and I know how much you're gonna enjoy it. I know how much I'm gonna enjoy it.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. It's cool too because already too we're making moves. Some things I don't want to talk about right now until it's fully officially announced. But
Moving forward.
you and we're moving forward and we're moving up and we're going to continue doing the Ontario Wildmen show because we love it. You and I both love bringing the Ontario side of history on the Wrestling Nostalgia Network.
Yeah, and I've got the piece of paper, and if we were live today, we'd see the piece of paper that Jesse's written already on all the subjects that we're going to talk about on the Ontario Wildmen podcast. And let's just we got January, February, March, April, May, June,
The whole year.
September, October, and we've got the whole 2022 already mapped out, and the topics are like phenomenal. It's old, it's new, it's so we're going to talk about one of the most famous wrestlers of all time. We're going to talk about WrestleMania, some of our favorites, some of our things that pump us up every day. So it's going to be just awesome.
Yeah, when we started this thing this year, we didn't think that we would make it to December. But now that we've done it, we're like, hey, we got people that listen to us every month that rely on us to bring the history aspect of Ontario and learn about Ontario, Canada. And that's what we like. And yeah, Wes is right. I planned out 3 years in advance and we picked the top. Hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about this. We made a 2022 schedule. We are ready to go for next year. It's been awesome this year. Bringing the history of Ontario to the listeners of the network. With the new group, it's the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance. Our first episode is gonna come out in January. We don't really have an official date yet. We're still working on that. We're even doing auctions to help promote our stuff. Like, we're doing everything we can to make this another successful show, just like this one.
Yep, we were looking for some editing help, and I decided that we would do an auction to sell some of our collection and to raise some money to help either pay for some software or for some editing or whatever we might need. And believe it or not, the graciousness and the generosity of some of our listeners has been absolutely phenomenal. I don't know if I should say names or not, but someone donated 4 Wildman wrestling posters, just donated out of the goodness of their heart to raise money, and they brought in a tidy sum, and some of the magazines I sold brought in some money. So, and then someone else who's connected to the Wildman page has offered to graciously donate some money also, and we're not looking for donations. We're not looking for anything. We just want to get on with this, and I appreciate everyone listening. I appreciate everyone helping out, and this is going to be so much fun. And Jesse, I don't know about you, but I don't think there's any other podcasts that are doing this.
There's a lot of video podcasts out there, and we know that. But what we want to do is keep it with the history clippings, and I don't think people are doing that.
Yeah.
And it's going to be cool to say, hey, check this out, and this is the card, and if you notice on here, this is what it means, and it's going to be
picking his nose right now, so we're glad we're not on live tonight.
Tastes good.
I've got no top on.
Yeah, trust me, it's not a sight to see. I'd rather stare at George the Animal Steel.
Me and him have the same back.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
Well, Wes, I got a busy couple weeks ahead of us, don't I?
Yes, go ahead, Jesse. Tell us where you're going to be, because it's so much fun when you are out and about.
I know you love it when I go out.
Intermingling with the wrestling crowd in Ontario.
Yeah, December 19th, I will be at Destiny Wrestling in Mississauga. Great show. Channing Decker versus Mike Bailey. You got PCO versus Josh Alexander.
Oh, really?
Yeah, big
Okay,
time.
good one.
Yeah.
That'll be a good
And
one.
you got some Quebec talent, Matt Angel. He's one of the top Quebec stars right now, coming to face Aiden Prince, another top Ontario star. It's going to be a stacked card. I'm really looking forward to it.
Good.
December 23rd, I'm going to be at Greektown Wrestling, and that's another amazing show. And I can't wait to see Eric Young and Channing Decker in a hardcore match. They got a lot of other stuff. And there's a lot more to come on that that we will announce later. And then December 29th or 28th, I'm at the WWE house show. So the first time WWE has come to Canada since all this COVID nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And then December 30th, I'm going to Demand Lucha, and I'm possibly doing ring crew for Rob.
Right on.
Because we'll see. But it's a 19 plus show, and I'm going to go down to the Opera House in Toronto, and I'll be at the Demand Lucha show. So I am going to be everywhere.
So anybody
And
about going to any of these shows, look up Jesse, and he'll give you $5. So
no, I will not give them $5. But if you want, I'm on Instagram at Wrestling Jess. Plain simple on Instagram at Wrestling Jess. I'm going to be everywhere. I'm going to post pictures of where I'm sitting. I cannot wait to start getting out on the independent scene and seeing all these people come and ending the year off with a bang. And I don't want to forget to mention that our Ontario Wildmen shirt is available on Pro Wrestling Tees. Just go to the search bar and look up Ontario Wildmen, and you'll see our T-shirt there. You could follow us on Twitter at Wildman Podcast. We're pretty active there. Again, all of our Facebook groups too. Ontario Wrestling Clippings of the Past, the Wildman Tribute page, and the big one, the mothership, the BL and all, the Olympian Falcon, National Wrestling Clipping Alliance. And that's the big one. The NWCA is the main one that we're going to be working on going forward, and we hope to see everybody join it. I made it very simple to find our groups. It's just facebook.com/groups/National Wrestling Clippings Alliance. You can do the same thing, facebook.com/groups/Ontario Wrestling Clippings of the Past, and you can do the same thing, go group facebook.com /group/ I think Dave the Wild Man is it under. So we're
okay.
very easy to find. I fixed that all last night. So by all means, get on social media on Facebook and find our groups. Get involved in the history talk. Wes,
Good work.
anything else you want to say, bud, before we wrap it up? This could be our last episode of 2021.
This will be our last episode of 21. I want to say Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy holidays. Happy New Year to everyone also. Our life is different here. It's a big change for my wife and I, but we have our family here, and that's what's most important. I wish sometimes I was still in Ontario so that I could meet up with you. I wish sometimes I was still in Ontario to keep on doing my library research. But then if the libraries aren't open because of COVID, I wouldn't be going anyway. So I wish you and your family a Merry Christmas, and your daughter, Reagan. And I hope that Santa brings her something really, really nice. And my Christmas box is going out to you today or tomorrow, full of unbelievable wrestling clippings and old pictures and just jam-packed full of stuff.
The bikini photo of you two from '74.
No.
Damn, Lynn promised me that.
There is a picture. It's me with some sort of a piece of paper in my hands. It looks like I'm rolling something, but I can't remember what that is.
Must have been a cigarette. I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays, a safe New Year. Stay safe, guys. I know that the world's a crazy place right now. Again, the holidays can be depressing for some, but just know that our Facebook groups are there. Come on, get interactive with us, talk the history with us. We have so much more that we're going to announce within this week alone. So if this episode's, our announcement might even come out before the episode even hits.
Yeah.
So, but we don't want to say anything until it's officially announced by the other party.
Now,
But we're looking forward to it. It's big news for us.
Are we going to be releasing this? Do you know when, sir?
Probably it's Monday the 13th.
Yeah.
It could be out this week or next Monday.
Okay. Good. So the fans have some.
What? The fans have what?
Nothing.
Yeah, the fans have time to figure out what we're talking about on our Facebook groups. But next month is a big month. So we're returning with a bang for the Ontario Wildmen. We're going to January 1988, the first ever Royal Rumble. And it happened in Ontario, and it's going to be awesome. So
It's going to be
please,
fantastic.
yeah, man. So please join us next month, January 2022. From Wes and I, we wish you guys the best. Finish 2021 in a positive manner. And if you haven't, join the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance today and keep the history alive. Until next time, I'm Jess.
I'm Wes.
And we are the Ontario Wildmen. Yep, Wes missed it. Have a good one, guys.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Jesse. Have a good one. Merry Christmas.